A couple nights ago, I was on an X Spaces program hosted by California Precinct Activators. Alongside me were two of the candidates running for governor, minor candidates here in California, Jim Athens and Mark Anthony Isles. And the host brought me on to talk about the SAVE Act and ICE enforcement, and we spent time talking about that and the SAVE Act, which is election integrity. It's about making sure folks are citizens when they register, and the law is very constitutional, and the ICE enforcement and the use of ICE and how it's being done and is very constitutional, and I've written about that in other places, and maybe I'll do a video on these in the near future. These operations, federal operations, do line up with constitutional allowances, and in my view, they also are not only constitutional, they're necessary, and I explained why. Now, as the discussion moved to the governor's race, Jim Athens began speaking about Steve Hilton and Chad Bianco. And I interrupted him, and I'll be the first to admit, I probably should have waited until he was finished, but I jumped in because he had mentioned Hilton's past political positions, and I knew what I had heard, and then he had also mentioned Bianco's, there are certain things about Bianco, and I know Chad Bianco. He's someone that I even would consider him a friend. And so I started to say, and once again, this was based on my understanding of things, what I had heard at that moment, that I believed Hilton had admitted that, he had some leftist positions in the past. And I was referring to, more specifically accusations that Hilton used to be socially moderate and maybe even socially liberal. I didn't get to finish my thought. Jim reacted strongly to the interruption, and then he left the broadcast. After that, Mark Anthony Isles gave his presentation, and when he finished, I asked him how he planned to navigate a Democrat-leaning legislature if he were elected governor, and his answer was, well, first, get elected. Man, I thought that was a fair answer. And don't get me wrong, I respect minor candidates, and I know another one, Leo Zaki, who I think would be a fantastic governor, and you look at Jim Athens' site, and he stands in the right place on the issues, and I respect all of these guys, and I appreciate their passion, but I also recognize political reality in a jungle primary like California's, and that is that minor candidates can split the vote and unintentionally help the Democrats. I didn't say that on the broadcast. I stuck to the issues, but it's a factor worth acknowledging. So then once conversation came back to me, I returned to the conversation about Hilton and Bianco, and I tried to clarify my position, and the host apologized that Jim Athens had basically read me the riot act about interrupting him and got upset and left and all that, and I get it. I host programs, I do videos, I'm a public speaker, I'm used to having the stage to myself, and perhaps as a candidate, he wanted to be able to do his spiel without, any interruptions. I get that. And then I, trying to clarify my position, I was honest. I said that I didn't know whether Hilton was ever truly a leftist, whether he had an ideological shift, whether Athens' accusations had any merit, but I saw no harm in Athens asking those questions. In fact, what I was going to say when Jim Athens got upset at me and interrupted us, it was that, while I think that Hilton has admitted to his, past and he's changed or whatever, there's nothing wrong with asking the questions. That's what debates are for. Hilton can either set the record straight or he can reveal something voters deserve to know. And as for Chad Bianco, I've known him for years. I remember when he was still a lieutenant and he was running for sheriff. The first time I used to be president of a nonprofit called Constitutional Association. We have since shut it down. Back in May of 2015, he was our first speaker at our first monthly meeting. And I've gotten to know Chad Bianco over the years, and I never bought into the claims that he knelt for Black Lives Matter or that refuses to work with ICE, which is a lot of what people are saying about him. And Athens, I think, was nodding towards. And so I wanted to kind of get out my side of it. Once again, I'm used to hosting things, so maybe I was being a little too chatty. I don't know. So first I wanted to talk about, on the program, Chad Bianco on ICE enforcement. This is where the conversation earlier about constitutionality of ICE and how they've been handling it and all of that jazz. This is where our conversation earlier became important. And Bianco's position on ICE enforcement is pretty straightforward. He supports ICE's authority and mission. He rejects the narrative that ICE operations are unlawful or racially motivated. He believes activists and some political leaders misrepresent ICE actions and create unnecessary fear. He has publicly pushed back against state interference in federal enforcement, and he is, and I think this is probably among the most critical, is that he has made it clear that his deputies do not conduct immigration enforcement themselves. This is where I guess the controversies come. People have misinterpreted that. Well, we're not going to conduct immigration enforcement. We're not going to do direct immigration. So there are those that have said out there, well, that means he's against ICE or immigration enforcement. That's not what he was saying. Or what he was saying was very appropriate. If they encounter someone unlawfully present in the country during the course of their duties, then they will, coordinate with ICE for transfer of custody, but they're not going to go out there looking for illegal aliens. That's not their job. As sheriff, his job is to do the duties of whatever the sheriff is, local county issues. But, it's just like I had a friend of mine who used to be in the Border Patrol. And he says, hey, man, we're not the local police. So if we pull someone over because we believe there might be, because we were given information that they might be, illegals, and then it turns out they aren't, but they were driving under the influence, then we could do a citizen's arrest and then contact local authorities and then transfer the custody to the local authorities. And, law enforcement is still law enforcement. But if a particular crime is outside their jurisdiction, that doesn't mean they go, there's nothing I can do. It's not my jurisdiction. They can apprehend, detain, and then contact the appropriate jurisdiction for transfer of custody. And that's basically the way it's supposed to work. And on the X Space, a retired police officer and congressional candidate, Erskine Levi, was on the show, and he confirmed that is exactly how it should work. As for the kneeling controversy, and then this is, there's a viral image of Chad Bianco, Riverside County Sheriff, running for governor of California, kneeling. The critics claim it shows him kneeling to Black Lives Matter, but Bianco has explained, and I believe him, and once again, I know him, I believe him, that the moment was a prayer for peace during a tense protest, not a political gesture. The image was selectively framed. They caught it when his head was turned a certain way, whatever, and it's been used to mislead. I understand this. I went out for the X Spaces that I was on. They had taken an image of me that I took in 2023 in front of the Jefferson Memorial in Washington, D.C. I was there for a reading ceremony of the Declaration of Independence, and they had taken and turned it into an AI video, and it has me saying something that I haven't necessarily said before, but it was in line with what I say. I didn't take a video in front of the Jefferson Memorial, so it was almost kind of creepy. But nonetheless, I get it. There is technology out there, be Photoshop or AI or whatever, that can make something look like what it wasn't. Or even if you just take a picture at a certain moment from a certain angle or whatever, it can look something different if it's explained that way. And so I've always been a big, firm proponent that of context being critical. I'm a big deal on that. It's a big deal to me that, about context. I've always been funny about that. So once again, when it comes to that kneeling controversy, I tend to believe that there may be some monkeying around, selective framing, that image is being used to mislead. I believe Chad Bianco, and I'm not going to vote for Katie Porter, or if I was in California, I wouldn't vote for Katie Porter or Swalwell because Bianco may have kneeled. Those, even if he did and it was a mistake or he regrets it or whatever, he's still 100 times better than someone like Swalwell or Porter. So as the program then continued, and I got into Steve Hilton's background, and I said what little I knew, and then that was it. And so on the program, this is now not what I talked about on the program per se, because all I knew was what few things I'd heard. And I basically said, I don't know where the guy is for sure. I know what the rumors are. I know what the accusations are. And, So I'm totally fine with Athens wanting to, Jim Athens, gubernatorial candidate, wanting to ask him these questions directly. I get it. Now, that said, despite the accusations, and again, I recognize you only know so much. But Hilton, according to what I've seen, is not an extreme leftist, was not an extreme leftist in the UK. He was a strategist for the Conservative Party and an advisor to Prime Minister David Cameron. Now, I get it. Cameron wasn't exactly the most conservative of folk, but compared to the Labour Party, he was. Understand that what's considered conservative in Britain is still pretty far to the left here in the States. And so we can still say that maybe Hilton was, not quite as conservative as we would like him to be, but he was considered conservative in the UK. But his reputation was that of a center-right modernizer, not a progressive activist. Again, I want to take into consideration that what is considered conservative in Britain is pretty far to the left still here in America. So also, while there was no public record of him advocating for abortion rights or transgender ideology overseas, that doesn't necessarily mean that he never held private moderate or leftist views, or in some obscure moments even voiced those beliefs. Whether or not the documented record does or does not match the accusations, Athens is within his rights to press Hilton on these issues, and he should. Voters deserve clarity, and as for me, I would rather an American-born, American-bred individual ascend to the position of governor of California. So Bianco seems to me to be the best candidate. And so when it comes to the polling over the governor's race in California, and understand, this is early. I mean, we just now broke into the year here. But regardless of what I think, and regardless of if I think the polling is skewed, what we have, the polling seems pretty close. Across the most reliable California pollsters, Emerson, PPIC, FM3, Binder, PPP, the pattern is consistent. Chad Bianco and Steve Hilton are the only Republicans in double digits, and they are neck and neck. Democrats are split among multiple candidates, Katie Porter, Swalwell, and the list goes on. Bianco has momentum, gaining ground in recent polls. Hilton remains competitive, with some polls showing Hilton or Bianco, and in some cases, both of them ahead of the Democrats. There is no Rasmussen or Trafalgar poll yet. This just simply means that the race is being defined right now by California-based firms. These national polling agencies or companies will probably get involved later on as things heat up and we know more and all that jazz. And so what we're seeing is this is one of the most competitive Republican showings in a California governor's race in years. Is it possible that a Republican can win the gubernatorial election in deep blue California in 2026? It's very possible. And so now that we've said all that, let's connect all of this to the national mood of things, because, the midterms are this year. And I believe, when it comes to the national picture, the election in November, the midterms, as we might call it, is critical. And I say that, understanding that in the past we've have this tendency, the most important election in history. Well, it is a very important election, and in some ways it looks like it could be a red wave. But then we've said that in the past, and it wasn't. So right now, just looking at the polls, once again, we're early. Democrats lead the generic congressional ballot by several points. Senate Republicans face a difficult map. The House is competitive, but leans slightly lefty. The Democrats and for the Democrats in early polling. That said, I've always believed that the polls lean leftward by an extra 5 to 15%. So I believe the GOP holds a slight edge on the Democrats. And as the Democrats become more radical, more voters are slipping through their fingers. That said, we also have to remember James Carville's old line, right? It's the economy, stupid. And, the Democrats have been bringing up this affordability. Well, I think things are more affordable, but they use the media. They've got, the ear of many parts of the public, general public, and so affordability is an issue. Affordability, if it improves, if prices ease, if wages outpace inflation, if the job market strengthens, well, then the national mood will shift quickly, and even the leftist polls will begin to show the Republicans in the lead. Now, midterms are often a referendum on how people feel about their own economic situation. Or as the saying goes, we vote with our pockets. And if that feeling improves by summer, by election time, the political environment could change dramatically. And the curse of the party in power losing the midterms may not necessarily hold to be true in 2026. So here's where we stand. This is where we are now. A contentious governor's race in California. Candidates challenging each other's histories. A sheriff defeating his record. A media personality defending his past. And a national electorate watching the economy like a hawk. And we need to win the midterms. And when I say we, I mean those who support Trump and his agenda, because if he doesn't, if the Democrats pull off what they think they're going to pull off in November, they will be impeaching Trump. They will do everything they can to obstruct him, and they will do everything they can to undo everything that he's done. They'll go after the tariffs. They'll go after the Doge cut in spending. They'll bring back all that spending. So it is important that we pay attention, that we are informing ourselves, that we are talking about it, that we're out there, and that we are at the ballot box. So we'll see you next time. Thanks for spending the time with me. As you see on that upper bar there, DouglasVGibbs.com or navigation2liberty.com, navigation, the number 2, liberty.com. And be sure to subscribe. Be sure to share this with other people. Go ahead and comment. I do pay attention to comments when I get a chance, and something that you say, something you ask in the comment section, I may do a video on next time. We'll see. See you next time.